The following program sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts.
About money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your host, Mike Adams, is a registered investment advisor and works with investment portfolios exceeding over $100,000 in net worth, and has a proven track record of managing long-term investments surpassing the markets in the long term. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's Mike.
And it is Thursday, or it could be Friday, or it could be Saturday. Depends upon when you're listening. We come live on Thursday afternoons at 3. The program's repeated Fridays at 3, and again Saturdays at 6 p.m. So no matter what, you should be listening to the program. And if you miss any part of the program on Thursday, you can pick it up on Friday or Saturday, or if you know what I'm saying. Anyway, so in the late 1900s, many physicians really were discouraging women from getting higher education. Why were these educated, primarily men, educated men saying that women shouldn't get a higher education, that high school was enough? I think you'll be surprised at why, and that's coming later in the program. We'll get to that. The International Energy Agency says that by now, between now and 2050, there'll be $45 trillion spent on energy production in energy-related industries by 2050. Think about that, $45 trillion. I'm going to give you some background on thoughts and what to expect, and I'm not even sure we'll understand, even with that, looking forward the next 30 years, what changes are going to happen. Just think about it. 2 years ago, I did a program on electric cars. I did the program because there was an article from the head of General Motors, the head of OPEC, saying they weren't worried about electric cars because they expected by 2040 only 1% of cars would be electric cars. Out of the billion cars that would be sold, only 1%. And today it was 0.1. A few months ago, Ford came out with a prediction that by 2020, 50% of the cars that are sold are going to be electric. Things change. So even saying $45 trillion will be spent on energy, I'm not sure we know what's going to happen in the next 30 years. But anytime you have a business that's undergoing through dramatic changes like energy is, there's going to be opportunities, significant opportunities for investment and for making money. And that's part of this program, is to put you ahead of the curve so that you're prepared for that, so that you can make the right investments and not be left behind. Talking about energy, it's one of the major issues that's going to be faced in the United States and in the world, for example. It's a significant issue coming forward, and it's not going to be an easy one to solve. Because, and I'm basing some of this information on a book that was written by Friedman and Mandelbaum, a book that was called That Used to Be Us, it's a fact that as the countries grow, as economies grow, they consume more energy. Even look at what's happened electricity-wise in the U.S. Our electrical consumption, with all the electronic devices and all that we're adding, our electrical consumption is only going up by about 1% a year because we're becoming more and more energy efficient. And you're going to hear about that later in the program because my guest is certainly contributing to that. And it's important to understand that aspect of what he's doing as well. But our energy consumption will continue to grow worldwide, and that has an implication on the environment. Because most energy sources where we're producing energy are creating carbon emissions. So we're seeing the climate change happen. That's one side of the equation. We have to be aware of that because it is making a difference. It's making a significant difference. You know, we live on this planet. This is our planet. This is the only one we have. And that planet has greenhouse gases. You've heard that expressed a lot. But let me give you an analogy of what's happening and why people talk about greenhouse gases. You know, it's a sunny day today. In the summertime, if you go out, you go to the grocery store, you go to the strip mall, you go somewhere, you're in your car, the air conditioner's going, you've got it set at a nice 69 or 70 degrees. Things are good. It may be 75 or 80 degrees outside, but you're in a nice, comfortable, air-conditioned car. You park that car, and it's outside. You're parked in the sun. You get out, shut the car off. You go in, and maybe you go in and have a meal at some place like Mama's Tortini's or one of the other restaurants. Or you go into a shopping, you go do something, but you're there for a couple hours or an hour. You come back out, and you know what's happened with that car. The temperature isn't 75 or 80 degrees. The temperature inside that car is hotter than it is outside the car. You've been through that any number of times. What's happened is that car, when you lock it up, you have created an atmosphere inside that car. And as the sun shines on it, it's putting energy inside the car. But that energy is not completely reflected back out. Some of it's reflected out through the windows. Some of it is dissipated through the surface of the car. But a good deal of that energy remains in the car and starts to heat and continues to heat the air within that car. That's the impact of what greenhouse gases are having on our Earth. As carbon emissions have gone up, what we've seen is that the average temperature has increased. If you look at where we are, the year 2016 was the hottest on record, the hottest it's been in 137 years since we've been measuring that. Is it due to just greenhouse gases? Nobody really knows for sure. We're watching those things happen. You can't say for sure whether it's just greenhouse gases or whether it's just kind of an environmental thing where the Earth is heating up, but it's having a significant impact. And the greenhouse gases, regardless of whether it's the cause or whether it's a contributing factor, it is at least a contributing factor. It's building up in the atmosphere. And the planet, the atmosphere is heating up every year, a few tenths of a degree centigrade. And what that means is, as we sit here, it's like that old example of the frog sitting in the water. You know, if you drop a frog into boiling water, it'll hop out. But if you put the frog in water and slowly heat the water will heat up until the water is boiling and the frog dies. No, I don't know if that experiment's ever been done. I don't know if that's true or not. But it's a good story. It's a good example. And it illustrates the fact that if we don't begin to deal with, and we are dealing with, atmospheric conditions, we're going to see global warming and climate change. And as you heat up the atmosphere, it retains more moisture in the atmosphere. You know, and as you end up with more moisture in the air, you begin to disrupt the air around us. You begin to disrupt, you begin to have more storms. You begin to heat up the glaciers, and we're seeing 87% of the glaciers are in retraction. They're retracting, they're melting. We're seeing all sorts of impacts. We're seeing water levels that are increasing. We're seeing storms that are hitting. All of that's an impact from climate change. And that climate change is probably going to continue until we do something about it. Whether it's just the the Earth going through one of its cycles, and we know that the Earth goes through those cycles. We know that we went through an ice age at one time. We know that the Earth goes through those cycles. Whether it's carbon emissions that are causing it or whether they're contributing to it, by reducing carbon emissions, we can help and slow down that natural change. That's one side of the equation. But the other side of the equation is we're seeing a growth. I've talked a number of times about the super cycle. When the world economies grow at a faster pace than average, and we're in one of those super cycles right now. We've gone through some bumps and ups and downs with the Great Recession, but if you look at where we are from 2009, world economies are starting to grow faster than average. The prediction is that 93% of the world's middle class will live in emerging nations by the year 2020. We're going through those changes, and growth requires energy. And that energy has only a few sources. We're going to talk about those sources after the commercial break. But we have an expanding energy consumption, and a lot of that energy consumption contributes to climate change. We have both issues to deal with. And so we're coming to a commercial break. When we come back, I'll talk about energy sources and what's going on and changes and benefits where you can benefit as an investor. So don't go away. We've got more to come.
About Money with Mike Adams will resume in a moment on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Did you know the 20-year annualized S&P return was 8.19%, while the 20-year annualized return for the average equity mutual fund investor was just 4.67%? That's a gap of 3.52%. It doesn't sound like much now, but it could mean the difference between retiring in comfort and running out of money. For some seniors, a gap that large could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars and cut their retirement short. Don't run out of money. Call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts today, 206-903-1019, and learn more about how you can, 1, create wealth for retirement, and 2, protect yourself from running out of money. Adams Financial Concepts specializes in creating and maintaining wealth. Call today, 206-903-1019, or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
We're back with more About Money. For details on what you hear on today's show, visit adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Now, here again is Mike Adams.
So welcome back, and we're talking about energy, but I want to take you back and divert things for just a second. I want you to imagine that you are a Native American in the 1700s. Native American, you're standing in the plains, you're looking out, you're seeing thousands of buffalo, you're seeing them roaming free, you see the teepees and the tents, you see your people, you see the buffalo, you know what you've been doing for this whole time. That's the world you see, and that's how you imagine the world's going to be. Can you ever conceive that Indian would ever conceive what's happened today? There's no buffalo, there's trains, there's roads, there's planes. The world changes, and those changes happen in a disruptive way. So when we talk about energy and we talk about energy sources, what we're looking at today is probably not what we're going to see 50 years from now. Change happens dramatically, and change happens disruptively. And in today's world, it happens ever more frequently. In some ways, I think we're like the Indians standing out there in the 1700s. We're looking at what's going on and trying to project into the future. Generations down the road, still being able to hunt buffalo, still being able to pick up and move our village tents, our village teepees, and move them anywhere we want to move them. I think in many ways, that's what we're looking at. And we have to be open that those things are going to change. But if you look at today and where we are, if you look, the United States consumes about 25% of the world's energy. We consume about 22% of the world GDP. We have a population of about 5%. So think about that. 25% of the world's energy, 22% of the world GDP, and we have 5% of the world's population. Now, if the forecasts are correct that 93% of the world's middle class will live in the emerging nations by the year 2020, and already we're seeing middle class in countries like China and India have already passed the population of the United States. Not that those people in the middle class have an average income that we do, but they're consumers, and they're beginning to grow, and they're beginning to create wealth, and they're beginning to become affluent. That's moving the direction. That means that their growth is increasing faster than our growth, and their energy consumption is moving up faster than ours. If you look at today, if you look at just the U.S. today, a quarter of our energy that we use comes from coal. It's half the electrical use. Coal is cheap. It's easy to recover. But we're not the only ones using coal. China's building 2 new coal plants every week. That's 100 coal plants every year. And the disadvantage is that they're putting a lot of mercury and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. And that's not going to go away. Between 1980 and 2006, 26 years, we've seen coal production increase 82%. You know, at the same time, it's cheap and it's easy to recover the coal. There's a probability there may be some investment opportunities going down the road. There's talk about clean coal. There's talk about increasing the efficiency, because in those coal-fired plants, the efficiency of burning coal and recovering energy from coal is only about 25%. It's about the same as an internal combustion engine. 25% is actually useful energy, 75% is wasted. As they talk about clean coal technology, some of the technology is recovering 60 to 65% of the energy from coal. That means that you only have to use half as much coal to create the same amount of energy as we're making today. And the technology is expensive. I can remember I started my career at Intalco Aluminum, and I can remember we had the furnaces that were spilling off gases into the atmosphere, and it took some government regulation to have those furnaces covered so that the effluent, those fumes, were covered and scrubbed. It may be necessary to do that for the coal burning plants. And they produce sulfur dioxide, which contributes to acid rain. You know, there's things that can go on. There's things where, even though coal is a bad word for environmentalists, there may be some investments and there may be some way in which we can take advantage of some of those coal. The second source of energy, just over a third of energy, is produced from oil. It's relatively cheap next to hydro and coal. But the transportation system in place requires pipelines, and we've had controversies over the Keystone Pipeline, over the other pipelines we're building. And the carbon emissions, while they're less than coal, they're still significant. And oil recovery is not efficient enough. There may be opportunities for investment in oil as well. You know, hydropower is limited right now, but people are beginning to talk about very small production dams using hydropower to generate. Will it be enough? I don't know. Hydropower is about 6% of the energy we produce, but between 1980 and 2006, we saw a 50% increase. And in the world, 16% of world energy is coming from hydropower. Once you build the dams, it's relatively cheap, and it allows irrigated lands to flourish. So there's some advantages. But long term, there are the renewable alternative energy. And we're just at the very beginning of that. It's clean. There's no fuel consumption when you talk about some of the alternative energy. But if you look, if just 5% of the wind could be captured, it would supply all the current energy needs. Just 5% of the wind that blows. The problem is, it only works a third of the time, and you need a lot of towers and generators, and there's some environmental aspects and birds that are killed and so on that goes on. And the strongest winds are on the surface of the oceans, which are going to be very difficult. Yeah, there's some opportunities, but there's some difficulties. Solar, the source is free. And what we're seeing now is cost has come down, and it's very justifiable. Justifiable in 46 of the 50 states. It is returning the investment in solar, and it's only going to get cheaper. And once you make that investment, the cost is very minimal for maintaining solar power. Even utilities are putting in solar power. The disadvantage, of course, is that at night it doesn't work. But we're going to see more and more solar power. We're going to see more geothermal power from the waves and the tidal events. And we had Alta Rock on the program a couple years ago. They're recovering geothermal energy by drilling into the earth and capturing geothermal energy there. Current technology is just at the very beginning phase, but we're going to start to see this. And then if you look down the road, and my illustration of the Indian on the plain looking at the buffalo may be appropriate, because if you look at the matter that we know and the energy we know, it only makes up 4% of the universe. Only 4%. 96% is dark matter and dark energy. 75% dark energy in the universe. It's theoretical now. It's beyond theoretical. But if we could begin to capture that, that's a remarkable source of energy. And I think it may be like the Indians sitting on the plains looking at the buffalo. We can't even imagine that. We can't imagine what it would be like in 1850 that people would be flying from Seattle to Tokyo or Seattle to Paris. There's things which are coming. It's a matter of being prepared. And with that, I want to introduce my guest because we're talking about energy and he's got a lot to say about it. It's Anthony Mashmelt from Dwell Development. Welcome to the program, Anthony.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
So why don't we start with a little bit of your background before the commercial break, and we'll come back and talk about Dwell.
Sure. My background, born and raised here in Seattle, for the most part in the North Seattle area. I'm an identical twin. My mom was an award-winning interior designer and a contractor growing up, so I've always been around development and construction, and my passion has always been around real estate. And I had an opportunity to join a family business in 2002 where we were designing and building homes ourselves. And 2005, I started Dwell Development. I went off on my own and started my sustainable, green, modern design build firm, and it's put me here today. It's been an interesting journey through the recession and being a young developer, but we're standing tall and proud at this moment in the industry right now.
We're going to be talking about Dwell. We're going to be talking about some of the homes that you build because it's very fascinating to do.
Looking forward to it.
So you mentioned that you were in a firm with your mother and brother.
Yes.
And I imagine that suffered a little damage in the Great Recession.
It did. And unfortunately for them, I had already left the company right before the downturn and started Dwell Development out on my own. And my model actually proved to be a winning concept for us during the downturn because we were very modern, very green. So buyers that were out there enjoyed our product. But unlike the other builders out there, my mom and my brother got damaged quite heavily.
Yeah. Don't go away. We're going to talk about green building. So stay with us. It's a fascinating thing.
For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
Now we return to About Money. There's more information waiting for you at adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here again is your host, Mike Adams.
So, before I come back to Anthony, what was it that physicians found so harmful that young women at the beginning of the 1900s, what was so harmful about women going on to higher education? We'll get to that later on. But I'm here with Anthony Mashmelt of Dwell Development. We started talking about his background, but let's talk about what Dwell does.
Well, we are a very focused boutique design build firm that specializes in high performance modern homes, all infill homes in the city of Seattle.
So, but beyond that, there's a lot more to the story.
A lot more to the story, yes.
So tell us about.
So in particular, our focus has always been to get all of our homes to use as less energy as possible. So we have to go through a certification program in order to do that. I'm part of the Master Builders Association Built Green program. I'm the chair of the Built Green Executive Committee in the city of Seattle. And our mission is to work with the city and work with utilities to figure out plans and ways to help builders and consumers identify ways to live in a more sustainable home, build more sustainable homes, and reduce energy consumption in those homes.
So there's a rating system.
Yes.
Tell us about the rating system.
Well, it's part of the Built Green program, and it's a third-party verification program. Our energy verifier is Tadashi Shiga from Evergreen Certified, and every builder that wants to make sure that their home is Built Green certified has to choose what level they go at, a 3-star, 4-star, or 5-star. Real simply, a 3-star certified home is about a home that's 10 to 15% above energy code. A 4-star Built Green home is about 25 to 35% above energy code, and a 5-star Built Green home is about 50% above energy code. We're the only builders in the city of Seattle that has and always will build exclusively 5-star Built Green or beyond, pushing net zero on most of our homes now.
So let's talk about the net beyond. You built a home.
We built a home in Ballard called the Emerald Star Home, and it was the first of its kind on a spec level in the region that we know of, maybe the country. As part of the Built Green Executive Committee, we wanted to challenge ourselves and come up with a higher performing home than 5-star Built Green. And so we created this really challenging home to build, and it had some very big hurdles to overcome. 70% reduction in water, 100% renewable energy on site, heat recovery ventilation, FSC certified lumber, high performance windows. So you take all these things, no PVC plastic. You take all these things, it's like, wow, that's really hard to build a home like that. And
so let's take one by one.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
100% renewable energy.
Yes. So we chose solar. So obviously there's options and you can do solar thermal, but solar PV panels are the way we did it. Solar panels are how we did it. So the idea behind the Emerald Star home is you build a home that is super airtight, lots of insulation, lots of windows, and you make it so it doesn't need a lot of energy. And then you supplement that lower need of energy with the solar panels. So our Emerald Star home got to net zero energy with about an 8.8 kilowatt system on the roof.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is fun. And then the biggest hurdle also was for us to figure out a way to use renewable or reclaimed materials or FSC certified lumber. And that's really challenging. But we found an old barn in the Willamette Valley that we reclaimed and repurposed all the materials on the outside of the home for cladding. It looks really interesting and really neat, and we celebrate those materials. And even though they've been around 100 years, it's a speaking point when you see the home.
So tell us about the old barn, because
Yeah.
I think that's a fascinating story too.
My wife, Abby, kind of heads up that front. She researches and has connections with people all over the Northwest and Montana and Oregon, and she has these guys who kind of go around and drive around these old farmlands, and the cities in these farmlands are requiring these farmers to bring these barns up to code or tear them down. And I'm like, well, it's a 100-year-old barn. I'm not going to bring it up to code. So sometimes they were burning them, and sometimes they were just letting them fall over and dismantling. And those guys, hey, we'll take that wood. And they used to give it away, and then the farmers got smart and they started selling the wood. But we've been in that kind of conversation for the last probably 5 years, where we said, hey, look, we'll take that wood and we'll reuse it for flooring in our homes, for cladding on our walls, and for siding, rain screen on the outside of our homes. And it adds a really interesting dialogue when you take an old material and blend it with a modern aesthetic. We call it reclaimed modern, and it's been kind of our motif for the last few years, and a very successful design option for us to consider compared to all the other homes that are being built in the city of Seattle.
And bricks.
And bricks, even old bricks from an old building that we had to remove off one site. We loaded them in the truck and brought them over to the Emerald Star and made our pathway out of them, and they look beautiful. Old sidewalks, even concrete, we made pathways out of. So what normal people throw away, we just kind of celebrate and reuse.
So let's also talk about the water system.
That was an interesting one. It's the first time we've done it and the only time since, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. But a 5-star built green home, we can get to about 60% reduction of water compared to a code-built home. Now, a lot of people think a code-built home is really good. It's code-built, right? That's really positive. Well, it's the worst home you can legally build and get away with. So it's like getting a D+ on your report card. It's the minimum standard that the city will allow to be built. And so our homes, 5-star, 50, 60% above energy code, Emerald Star, 100% above that code. So the idea is that we are always pushing harder and harder and harder to get our homes to be not just energy efficient, but lower consumption of water. So all the water that falls onto that roof of that house goes into a big cistern, and that cistern then filters that water, and it goes through pumps inside the house, and then those pumps supply water to the toilets, to the washing machine, the clothes wash machine, and then the outdoor hose spigots. So that helped us get to that 70% reduction of water, where no matter what we do and all the unique water features we put in our homes to reduce water, we couldn't get there without doing this rain catchment system.
So that's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
So how about the windows? Because most homes lose a lot of energy out the windows.
Yeah, and our typical homes, we use triple pane windows, high performance windows in all our homes. But on our uber efficient homes like Emerald Star or some of our net zero homes that we built, or passive homes, we have to go above and beyond that. And a lot of these windows we have to bring in from Europe and from Portugal. And so forth. So they're triple locking, high performance, either wood or clad windows with insulated frames and a lot of argon gas inside of them. So they let all that solar gain into the building, which you want. You want to capture that heat from the sun, but you don't want it to go back out. And so these windows help you do that in a very efficient way. So again, keep the house tight.
So when you said triple lock, what do you mean?
So there's a typical window that you have one latch that shuts the window. On these high-performance windows, there's 2 or sometimes 3 locks around the frame that really cinch that window frame tight when you want to lock it, and it keeps the seal really, really tight.
So if you keep everything really, really tight...
You got to ventilate it right, or your home's going to rot out.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so we have a system called heat recovery ventilation, and that's probably that secret sauce, and it's probably my favorite feature in these homes because it is constantly supplying fresh air throughout the house 24/7, 7 days a week. And instead of just taking that stale air inside the home and dumping it outside and then pulling in fresh, cool air, there's a heat exchange process that happens inside this HRV unit, heat recovery ventilator. And so, for example, if you like your home 70 degrees on the inside, and let's say it's a cold day, it's 0 degrees outside, it brings in that fresh, cold air at 0 degrees, heat exchange process, and it preheats that air that's coming into your home, into your bedrooms, into your kitchen, to about 67 degrees. So now your thermostat doesn't necessarily have to kick on, or if it does, there's only a few degree differential. So then your energy consumption is lower, and your utility bills are substantially lower.
So how does it heat the 0 degrees to 60 degrees?
There's a heat exchange process inside the heat recovery ventilator that captures that heat, stores it, and then when the cold air passes through it, it preheats that air.
Fascinating.
It is really fascinating. It's fun. And the biggest thing is the tangible side of it is that, our homes average about $1,500 to $1,800 a year in reduction in utility bills. And that's electricity, that's water and utilities, all those things add up. And that's a lot of money, in addition to the fact that you're not consuming that energy as well. So you're putting money back in your pocket and you're reducing your carbon footprint substantially.
It makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
So
no pun intended on that, right?
Do you custom build homes or do you design build? How does one go about contacting you? And
Well, we're not a traditional custom home builder, though every one of our homes we call custom spec. So we find land in the city of Seattle and we purchase that land. We design a home that fits on that land specifically. We've never designed and built the same home twice. So every home is, in essence, a custom home, but we control that process. We don't have a client that we work for in order to build a home for them. And then we market and promote and sell those homes under the Dwell brand, which is, we have quite a following. We've pre-sold probably about 95% of our homes over the last 12 years, well before the completion of construction, because people want to live in one of our homes, and there's very few of them that go on the market. So people contact us. If it's a good fit, then we shake hands and we do a deal.
so how would somebody get a hold of you?
Well, dwelldevelopment.com is the best place to get it. It's our website. You can see all we do and how we do it, and our projects and our contact information is all there. So I'll suggest that, unless you want me to give my cell phone out over the air.
If you want to give it, that's fine.
No, the website's probably the best place to do it.
So, and tell us the price range of your homes.
Well, they range. There's a big spread. When I started doing homes in 2000 and 2002, it was about $300,000 to $400,000 a home. Small townhouses, infill homes. We've expanded outside of townhomes now. We're doing large kind of single-family homes in premier neighborhoods. So the average price range for our homes is about $1 million now, but that's pretty typical. We have homes that sell for $700,000. We have homes that sell for 1.4, 1.5 million. Yeah.
So anyway, we're wrapping up. Again, what's the website?
www.dwelldevelopment.com.
It's a fantastic story. And if you're interested in a new home, and a lot of people are, check out the website.
Thank you.
And maybe you'll have a great home.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. About Money returns in a moment with Mike Adams here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
How do you picture retirement? House on the beach, small farm in the country, traveling the world with your spouse. The one thing you don't picture is running out of money. Retirement dreams are shattered all too often by poor investment choices, sending many retirees back to work. If you think the job market is tough now, try entering it after you've retired. Don't run out of money. Start planning now. Call Mike Adams of Adams Financial Concepts today at 206-903-1019 and learn more about how you can create wealth for retirement and, probably most importantly, protect yourself from running out of money. Adams Financial Concepts specializes in creating and maintaining wealth. Call today, 206-903-1019, or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com.
About Money continues. Remember the website adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So, as I started the program, I started with a little teaser. I started saying in the late 1900s, there were many physicians, or late 1800s actually, there were a lot of physicians who felt that higher education for women was not something they recommended. They said it was a factor in a decline of female health. We're no different today, but it illustrates a point. It comes from One Night Stands of the American History by Richard Schinken, a professor at the University of Washington, who's written a couple of very interesting books. And he quotes the physician in Sexuality in Victorian America, Haller and Haller. Education past high school was discouraged in those days because, according to the learned men who were physicians, it was physically and mentally destructive. They took a 130 girl sample of 137 girls out of a sample of 187. They found that the girls constantly complained of headaches, clear evidence, supposedly, that female inability to deal with higher education. Fatigue, depression, feelings of inadequacy, and other ailments, all that seemed to indicate it was from higher education. One physician actually stated the mental powers of young women are overtaxed before their brains are sufficiently developed. That was higher education. For men, there was a concern that it caused senility, loss of hearing, sight, and a host of other diseases. There was discouragement of higher education. Men were afflicted with paralysis, insanity, alcoholism, and crime caused by overwork on an upswing among women. So it was. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, that was the view. We know better now. But the fact is, with a limited amount of information, oftentimes people arrive at the wrong conclusion. The physicians were the experts, and that's what they believed. It wasn't factual. We know it was not factual, but for a period of time, it was a belief that was held. I think there's some of those same things that go on in the world today with financial products. I believe that annuities are chocolate-covered hand grenades. They look so good. They sound so good. But once the chocolate comes off, you have a real hand grenade. Now, the Fisher program Fisher does a lot of ads saying that the annuities are the worst investment you can make. And he's got a point to that, but it's advertising as well for him. Helen Olin wrote a book called Pound Foolish, exposing the dark side of the financial industry. She was a person who wrote financial columns for decades. And she said that there were two things about annuities. The first is they were increasingly sold to baby boomers who were worried about running out of money. And we know, I've quoted a number of times, the statistics for the number of people that are worried today that they're going to run out of money. And it's not just baby boomers. We're seeing that impact in people who are as young as in their 20s, worrying that they're not going to have enough money in their lifetime. So they're increasingly sold, however, annuities are sold to baby boomers because the baby boomers have the money to buy. And a number of baby boomers are retiring every year, and they're buying annuities. The second thing about annuities is they're so complicated, they're so difficult to understand, there's so many financial penalties that most people don't understand what they're buying. Even Susie Orman, who's not one of my favorites, and I don't agree with most of what she says, even Susie Orman and many other experts are saying the same thing, that annuities are sold for one and only one reason only, and that's because they make money for financial advisors. I mean, if you look at it, in reality, financial advisors make anywhere from 4 to 12% commission on an annuity. 4 to 12%. That's really significant. And some of those continue to pay all along. The question is not whether it's in the best interest of the client, but whether it pays the financial advisor. How can you reach this point? How can you really reach this point and say that it's really justified when the financial advisor makes more money than the client sometimes? Rates are advertised as high rates, but they reset they do reset. And oftentimes they reset down below. Alliance Master Dex started at 7% the first year and was reduced to 4% and continued down. And the variation can be even more complicated than that. You can buy inflation protection. You can buy shorter surrender periods. You can buy guaranteed income if the market falls. You can buy annuities which are market indexed. And let me tell you, those market indexed annuities, if the market goes up 7%, the annuity will be up 3.494. If the market's up 5%, the annuity goes up 1.49, and oftentimes those annuities are capped. So if the market's up 25%, you're capped at 7.5 or 8 or 9%. So, and the market usually has periods not where it's up an average amount of 9%, but where they suddenly have an explosion of 25 or 30%, and then they go flat for the rest of the time. You're giving up most of that. Corporate Insight did an independent study of 17 clients where 17 clients, 13 had hidden and undisclosed fees in their annuities. You know, think about it. If a financial advisor was really focusing on the best interest of his clients, would he really be pushing an annuity? Now, there's some people that should have an annuity. You know, I have a cousin that I really advised should buy an annuity. And the reason is because that cousin had a tendency to go through any cash they had. They came to me and they asked what they should do. He had had an inheritance, a significant inheritance, and within 3 or 4 years, they'd gone through the entire amount. He had a settlement that brought in a chunk of cash, and he wanted me to know what he should do with it. And in that case, I advised an annuity, because once the annuity is invested in, it's going to deliver him a set amount of income for the rest of his life. In fact, for he and his wife for the rest of their lives. That's what the purpose of an annuity is. If you can't keep your money off, if you can't keep your hands off your money, an annuity is really crucial because it will continue to pay. The defined benefit plans, those are pension plans which pay a certain amount based on your last salary. That's a significant analogy to what an annuity should be for. Deliver an annual income. But for running out of money, for most people, the only person that benefits from an annuity is the financial advisor. And he benefits very, very well. Anyway, that wraps up today. Have a very good weekend, and I will be back with more next week.
You've been listening to About Money with Mike Adams, a registered investment advisor. If you'd like more information about what you heard today, or about Mike's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you want Mike to evaluate your own portfolio, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The information shared on the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again for more About Money with Mike Adams here on Business Radio 1300 KKOL.
The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Creating and maintaining wealth has been the specialty of Adams Financial Concepts for over 20 years. Every portfolio managed by Adams Financial Concepts is customized to fit each particular client's objectives and risk tolerance. The client's interest always comes first in portfolio decisions. Call Mike Adams today at 206-903-1019 or log on to adamsfinancialconcepts.com to check out their AFC performance. They welcome your review. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The following program sponsored